Imagine a world where the rhythm of life is dictated not by the clock, but by the pulse of the river, where the salmon's journey home shapes the very culture and survival of a people. This is the world of the Yakama, whose history is as deep and flowing as the Columbia River itself. The Yakama, or Yakama Nation, are a Native American tribe with a rich history and cultural heritage, deeply intertwined with the landscapes of what is now south-central Washington state. Their story is one of resilience, adaptation, and an enduring connection to the land and its resources. The Yakama people, who refer to themselves as Waptayal-Mim, meaning people of the narrow river, have lived along the Columbia, Yakima, and Wenatchee rivers for thousands of years. Archaeological evidence supports the Yakama oral tradition, suggesting their presence on the Columbia Plateau predates European contact by millennia. Their society was built around the seasonal cycles of nature, engaging in fishing, hunting, and gathering activities that reflected a profound understanding of and respect for their environment. The arrival of Europeans, particularly with the Lewis and Clark expedition in 1805, marked the beginning of significant changes for the Yakama. The introduction of horses in the early 1700s had already altered their way of life, enabling them to venture further onto the Great Plains for bison hunts. However, with European settlers came diseases like smallpox, which decimated populations, and new pressures on their lands. The Treaty of 1855 was a pivotal event for the Yakama Nation, involving the U.S. government and 14 different tribes and bands. Under this treaty, the Yakama ceded vast areas of their territory, but retained rights to fish, hunt, and gather on lands outside the reservation. Almost immediately, tensions arose as the treaty was not honored in spirit by U.S. officials. Lands were open to settlers before the agreed-upon 2-year relocation period had passed. This led to the Yakama War from 1855 to 1858, a series of conflicts where Yakama, led by Chief Kamiakin, resisted encroachment. Despite early successes, the Yakama were ultimately defeated, forced onto a reservation, and faced further land losses through subsequent policy decisions like the Allotment Act. Culturally, the Yakama are known for their deep spiritual connection to the land, particularly the salmon, which is not just a food source but a sacred entity. Their traditional practices include the first salmon ceremony, where gratitude is expressed to the salmon for their life-sustaining return each year. The Yakama language, Ichishkin Sinwit, a dialect of Sahaptin, is another cornerstone of their identity, though efforts to preserve it face challenges as fewer elders speak it fluently. The Yakama's adaptation to modern times has been both challenging and dynamic. The reservation system disrupted traditional ways of life, pushing many into wage labor or farming. However, the Yakama have leveraged economic opportunities like fishing rights, which were reaffirmed through legal battles such as the Bolt decision in 1974, ensuring their right to half of the harvestable salmon in areas ceded by treaty. Their involvement in the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission reflects their ongoing commitment to environmental stewardship. Today, the Yakama Nation is a self-governing entity with a tribal council that includes representatives from each of the 14 original bands. This council manages a reservation sprawling over more than 1.2 million acres, addressing issues from health and education to economic development. The struggle for sovereignty and the recognition of treaty rights continues, as seen in battles over land use, water rights, and environmental protection against projects like dams, which have significantly impacted salmon populations. Dams on the Columbia and its tributaries have altered salmon runs, impacting traditional fishing practices. The Yakama have been at the forefront of environmental advocacy, pushing for dam removals or modifications to aid fish passage. Health and social issues. Historical and ongoing socio-economic issues, including poverty and high rates of health disparities among Native Americans, persist. The Yakama Indian Health Service, IHS, provides health care, but resource constraints are significant. Cultural preservation. Efforts to maintain language, traditions, and cultural practices are ongoing, with programs like language classes in schools aimed at younger generations. Through enterprises like the Yakama Nation Legends Casino, they bolster local economies, providing jobs and supporting tribal services. By sharing their history and culture through museums like the Yakama Nation Cultural Heritage Center, they educate both Native and non-Native communities.